Hey guys, it's Rainey Romero with the Carolina Justice Report. Today I am joined with attorneys Roberto, Anton, and Sarah Austin, and we are chatting about the hugely monitored case of Johnny Depp. So you guys, this is a huge case going on right now in kind of our neighboring state in Virginia, two over really. But you know, Roberto, for folks that don't really know what's going on with Johnny Depp, give us a little overview of where we're at.
So the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case originates because Amber Heard published an op-ed in a national newspaper, so it was distributed around the country, in which she came out in support of survivors of domestic violence and battered women, things of that nature. And while she did not mention Johnny Depp specifically, and she did not accuse him of anything in the piece, she does somewhat imply that he is a wife beater. Certainly anybody who read it and who knew who she had been married to and knew about prior issues, legal issues in England with Johnny Depp, would have known who she was talking about. The reason that the suit was brought in Virginia was because every state's defamation laws, defamation being the act of publicizing information about someone that harms their reputation, that is untrue. Well, every state has its own defamation laws, and the only state that had the defamation laws written broadly enough to encompass sort of backhand accusations that don't really mention somebody, but that the public might know who it was Virginia. And so he brought suit in Virginia to sue her for, I don't know how many tens of hundreds of millions of dollars.
But that's interesting that you bring that up, because that's what I was curious about. I was like, why is this happening in Virginia and not, you know, New York or California, or like where they're actually from? Why is it happening in Virginia? So that is a good point to bring up. I did not know that. And then, you know, Sarah, you and I were kind of chatting beforehand, and, you know, we read, you know, Amber Heard's op-ed, which, by the way, what is an op-ed? Does anybody know?
It's just an opinion piece. I think she wrote it for the Wall Street Journal.
Okay.
But I did read it, and she talked more about, and I think I had read previously too, that the ACLU actually wrote the op-ed and for her, and she just sort of reviewed the draft. So it was a lot more about where battered women can find resources and how we can stop domestic violence, which is great. There was just like a paragraph or two about how she is a victim of domestic violence and abuse. Right. And I think, I remember when
those two together. Would you have thought?
Yeah, well, I remember when it came out and she got the restraining order against him, because I was a big Johnny Depp fan, and I was like, wow, this kind of sucks.
Yeah.
You know, he's an abuser now. It changes the way I feel about him. So I even felt that way. So I'm not surprised that he's trying to do something about it. But the piece wasn't as bad. I never read the piece until this lawsuit. I went back and read it. It wasn't as bad as I thought.
Right, I agree.
It was from hearing his allegations. But he did lose a lot of stuff. A lot of roles, I'm sure, a lot of potential future roles, just because a lot of fans read it like I did and were like, wow.
Well, he lost his role with the Pirates. I don't want to say trilogy, but the Pirates, what's the word I'm looking for?
Franchise?
Yes, Pirates franchise. And then the
Fantastic
Beasts, he lost that as well, and he recently kind of announced that he wouldn't be doing that again. So yeah, he's definitely kind of feeling that
from it. But I know that he tried to bring it in the UK or something. I read, maybe Roberto knows more about that, and it got dismissed.
So the Sun, I believe it was the Sun in UK, which is basically a tabloid, published some unflattering representations about Johnny Depp. I think they called him a wife beater. I think they called him a number of other things. And England has, as I said, much looser laws about, or rather, it's more difficult to win on this kind of a case in England. So he lost there. And the thing was that because that case against that newspaper went for as long as it did, it was already in the public eye. And so then when Amber Heard almost immediately, or somewhat soon thereafter, publishes this op-ed in the United States, you know, there is the news cycle in Western Europe and North America is basically all just one thing. So people did pick up on it. Maybe not everybody who is, and even you're not super tied into celebrity news, but definitely people who are Johnny Depp fans and prone to follow news about him or her and maybe go see his movies just because he's in it. Maybe they got a different perception of him, and that's why he's asking for hundreds of millions in damages.
Well, and let's kind of go back to the history of these two as a couple. So they met on one of the movie sets, and then he was then married, and then they kind of reconnected a few years later. dated for a couple of years, then got married, and then they were not married for very long before they had filed for divorce, and she had asked for a restraining order. So, you know, we know now because of this trial that Amber Heard has a long history of, you know, abuse, physical, mental abuse that she kind of shares in that op-ed of her growing up with the abuse, and then her carrying that into her relationships, and, you know, the struggle that she kind of has with that. And what we're also finding out through this trial, which is going on right now, with Johnny Depp and Virginia and Amber Heard, is that they had a lot of crazy stories that happened during their relationship, which I think is why everyone's kind of having a frenzy with this, is just because some of these details that are coming out are so bizarre. What do you guys think about that? What are some of the crazy things? I know that, what's the one where he like cut his pinky?
Yeah, I wish I knew less about that. It's hard to stay focused on the defamation suit when I feel like the trial has become very just like telling every story of abuse, and
it's become a reality show, really.
It feels like it was a very toxic relationship, and maybe both had a part. And I think, you know, reading the op-ed and Amber Heard talking about her abuse her whole life,
right?
I think that was a good piece. I'm not sure that she had to sort of defame Johnny Depp to make her point. I think when I hear about how she's acting, of course, a lot of things are super crazy, but maybe she is suffering from trauma from before.
Right.
And she did carry that into her relationship, but for her just to pin it all on him, when you're hearing his side of the story, just seems like this is just a big mess, and I'm not sure it's worth.
Right. Yeah, I mean, some of the arguments are, I mean, talking about fecal matter that she put in the bed, and, you know, arguments where she, you know, threw whatever at him, or he threw a cell phone at her and hit her cheek, and she threw glass at him and it tore off his pinky. He wrote in blood on the wall. I mean, you know, do you know more about those specific details, Roberto?
I think she didn't like purposefully like stab him with a bottle to try to sever his fingers. She threw a wine bottle at him that may or not have already been broken. And I think he tried to deflect it with his hand, and then it ended up severing his pinky. And then at some point, I don't know if it was after New Year's or her birthday party or something along those lines, she may have gone number two in their marital bed that they shared, as one does after a birthday party. And yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. I think the important thing to focus on is that the purpose of the trial is Johnny Depp needs to, for him to prevail, he needs to prove that the piece did defame him. Obviously, it was written in such a way,
and that it was false, that he was not a wife beater.
And you know, you can tell that she didn't necessarily. She was trying to toe this line between not giving him a cause of action to sue her, but still sort of on the sly accusing him of being a wife beater, which is why you end up in this one state that neither one of them have connections to.
Right.
Because it's the one place where she did not manage to skirt legal liability. And I think that's why she got the ACLU to help her write it, because the ACLU obviously famously defends, you know, the First Amendment, regardless of who is the person who is, or the organization that is being prosecuted or otherwise harmed by having their free speech infringed upon. So these people should know. They should know what you can and can't say to cause a lawsuit or not.
Right.
And I think they just fell just short of the mark. I mean, just imagine 5 or 6 words less in that piece, and maybe none of this happens.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because she does speak out for women, and she did write that piece, which I felt was a really great piece. But she also didn't, you know, she neglected to kind of explain that she was also part of that, you know, which we now know coming out with the trial, that she had played a big part in her own abuse towards Johnny Depp, let alone maybe what she would have done or have done in the past with past relationships. So I think it's also interesting from that perspective too, because it's kind of like, okay, well, here's someone who's speaking out that you look at as a victim that we are now finding out is part of the problem from her side as well. Is there anything that kind of has surprised you guys with the trial?
I think I'm surprised by, you know, no one is coming out of this thing looking good.
No.
Everybody looks unhinged. Everybody, I mean, it is can you imagine going up there and basically just, and Johnny Depp does this, and he finds it all kind of funny that the world is finding out that he was in this incredibly toxic relationship fueled by drugs and alcohol. They were making terrible decisions all the time. They were awful for one another. And they still, the fact that they stayed together as long as they did is absolutely incomprehensible. And you hear her friends talking about how the fact that she was miserable, even when they weren't fighting, she was still miserable and bored. And it just, no one got out of this marriage what they thought they were going to. And I just don't understand how it is. Like, I would just be dying inside.
Yeah.
If this was about me. I would not want this kind of thing.
Yeah, I
on
think
me.
it's overall just really sad. I don't think that the defamation lawsuit is, I mean, it feels like it's on principle, just to make a point that he's not the only abuser in this relationship, which I don't think really helps his reputation. I don't think I'll ever look at either of them the same after hearing these details that
right, because there's recordings that have been released through this where it's saying, Johnny Depp is saying, oh, I love you, I want to work on things, nothing can ever get physical between us, or we need to just take a break from each other. And you can hear Amber Heard saying, well, I can't promise you that I won't be physical again because I just get so angry. And it's just interesting getting a look inside of these celebrity lives. Yeah, I don't know how it's going to be moving forward now. And also, for something that's a defamation trial, are other charges going to pop up from this of like abuse or anything, or how does that work?
I wouldn't think any criminal charges or anything are going to be brought up because it's so far in the past. I just think, I don't know, if I were Johnny Depp, I would not want this trial to be happening the way that it is. And he does kind of seem to be enjoying sharing all these details and kind of laughing at some points. I just think it's sad all the way around. I mean, those kinds of relationships are toxic and sad to begin with. And when you're not a celebrity, sometimes you don't have the resources to get away or to make a change. And that's when it's really sad. In this case, I think it's just, for me, it's hard to watch. So I haven't been paying attention to the little fight details because I don't care to hear those. And as far as the defamation trial goes, I think the whole trial being so public and so detailed is defaming both of them at this point.
Yeah. I think the issue with criminal charges is that the one thing everyone's going to take away from this is that neither of these people are completely in their right mind, and neither one of them looks great. Their credibility is kind of shot no matter how you look at it. No matter who's right or wrong on any given issue, neither one of them seems super credible. So what ends up happening is, let's say you were going to bring criminal charges and that it was still within the statute of limitations, which is basically, statute of limitations says that if a certain amount of time passes since a crime allegedly occurred, the law can't come after you. Some things don't have a statute of limitations, like murder and rape in most places, but most things do. And so the issue now becomes, if you're a prosecutor in the place where one of these crimes allegedly occurred, how good do you feel about getting to beyond a reasonable doubt on that thing having occurred when the only evidence is she said this and he said that, and neither one of them are incredibly credible one way or another? You're going to spend the state's money trying to prosecute that case at this point? No way. Especially when neither one of them made a criminal complaint about it. So that's that issue there. And I think an important takeaway about this is that he has to prove that he did not abuse her, or he wasn't abusive, or he did not behave in a manner that would justify the sort of allegation that she made against him in that piece. And what we're learning is that abuse is not just somebody hitting you physically. Abuse is a whole system. It's a whole ecosystem of horrible behaviors you can do to somebody. And I think it's important that I think a lot of people live in abusive situations and they don't realize it because their partner or whoever it happens to be that may be abusing them hasn't actually struck them. And I think it's important to keep in mind that just because somebody hit you or didn't hit you does not mean you're not being abused.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. So, moving forward, obviously we don't have a verdict yet, but what do you think is going to be the outcome for this? Do you guys have a side you're rooting for?
I'm not sure. I mean, the headlines seem to be favoring Johnny Depp as far as just painting Amber Heard as also an abuser. But I'm not sure. You never know what juries are going to do.
No.
If I'm a juror, I'm just throwing this whole thing out because I'm over it. And I think it sounds like it was an abusive, toxic relationship.
Right.
And I don't even really like Amber Heard that much.
Right.
And especially not after hearing what she did. But what she wrote about Johnny Depp, like I said, she's obviously traumatized and probably has suffered those abuses in her childhood that she talked about. She could have left Johnny Depp allegations out of it and still made her point and still
Right.
spoke up for her victims,
Right.
without having to bring all this to light, especially because she did also,
Yeah.
you know, participate in the abusive relationship. It doesn't sound like she was purely a victim.
Right.
In that
Yeah.
sense. But it
Is it
sounds like an
something-
abusive relationship. I wouldn't say that that is false.
Right.
That she was in an abusive relationship. 'Cause
Is it
this
something
was
that could
toxic.
be thrown out? Is that even an option?
They would just fine for Amber Heard and give them
And
both
move on.
$0. That's what it would be.
I think it's important to keep in mind, with all the things being said back and forth, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that what this case is actually about is whether the quasi allegations that she made against Johnny Depp for him being an abuser, whether or not that's founded, whether that's true or not, whether that's a defensible or justifiable thing that she said. And it's easy to forget that that's what this is about, and it's tempting to think about this as who is right or wrong in this marriage generally.
Right.
And he's bringing all this stuff about her, not because it doesn't make it more or less likely that he was abusive to her, that she did bad things to him. It's his attempt to make her seem like she's not in her right mind and therefore not credible, which is why you're getting all this stuff about all the things that she did to him. Because let's say that we were to take everything that everybody says as being true, everything that she says that he did is true, everything that he says that she did is true. Let's say everything is true. She still wins at that point, because the question in this case is not whether or not he was justified in being awful to her, or she was awful to him, or whatever happens to be. The question is purely, did he do things that constitute being abusive, such that when she said the things that she said in that op-ed, she was not being untruthful? That's the only thing that's on the line here, and that's what the jury's going to decide. And the question is, by the attorneys, or the attorneys for Amber Heard, is they have to keep that jury focused on that question. Because with all the other stuff going on, it would be easy for anybody, even me as a trained attorney, to forget what the actual question is and just say, both these people are nuts, I can't believe this, no way, whatever, what have you.
Yeah. Man, that's interesting. It's cool to get the lawyer take from that, because I would definitely lose sight and just be like, oh, she did this, and go Johnny Depp, right? Because he's just so huge in the public eye. But thank you both for your feedback on that. Really, really interesting stuff there. And we're gonna keep up on this. It's a huge trending topic right now. How could it not be? With celebrity gossip mixed in there too, right? So we will keep you updated on that. Make sure that you watch our other Carolina Justice Reports. We drop a new episode every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Of course, you can always go on to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, our website to find out any more information, and let us know what you want to hear about and what questions we missed here. Thanks for watching today. We'll see you next time.
When life gets ugly, justice is love.